Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something most of us, just do when we exercise, warming up and cooling down.
That's right. They're like the bookends to our workout.
Exactly. You see people doing it everywhere, right? Gyms, tracks, before a game, after a run. But have you ever really stopped to ask, is this just habit? Or is there something, deeper going on in those few extra minutes?
That's the core question we're digging into today. We've gone through a whole bunch of stuff, info from medical experts like the Mayo Clinic, a big scientific review from PMC looking at lots of studies,
Okay.
and insights from sports science journals, human kinetics, places like that, even checked out what trainers and athletes are saying.
So our mission today, for you listening, is to unpack the actual science here. What's the real story behind warming up and cooling down? What role do they really play beyond just, starting and stopping?
Precisely. Let's get past the routine and see what the evidence actually says.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. We all kind of hear we should do these things, but what are the actual recommendations from like the big health organizations?
Yeah, it's pretty consistent, actually. The Mayo Clinic, for instance, suggests that doing a proper warm-up and cool-down might help you reduce your risk of getting injured.
Okay, injury reduction, that's a big one for people.
And they also mention it could improve your athletic performance. Plus, they make a point that it often only adds a few minutes to your routine, which is good to know if you're busy.
Right. A small time investment for potentially big payoffs.
And it might lower the stress on your heart and other muscles, too. It's not just Mayo Clinic either. The American Heart Association recommends them.
Ah, okay, so heart health too.
Yeah. And the big physical activity guidelines for Americans from the Department of Health and Human Services, they also include recommendations for warming up and cooling down. So it's, pretty mainstream advice.
It really sounds like it. What about the people on the ground, like the athletic trainers working with athletes day in, day out? What are they telling people to do?
Well, there was this survey of trainers in the U.S., and it found that something like 89% of them recommend doing a cool down.
Wow, that's a huge majority.
It is. And interestingly, their most common suggestion for an active cool down, meaning you keep moving, was just light jogging.
Huh. Good old jogging. You see that all the time, right? Athletes jogging slowly after a hard effort.
Exactly. So what the experts recommend broadly seems to line up with what practitioners are actually doing, at least for cool downs.
Okay, so the recommendations are definitely there. Let's break it down now, starting with the warm-up. What's the science behind preparing the body? What's really happening when you get moving before the main event?
Right. It's more than just feeling less stiff. Science for Sport lays out a really useful three-phase model. They call it RAISE, Activate and Mobilize, and Potentiation Performance.
Okay, raise. That sounds pretty straightforward, like raise your temperature.
Exactly. That's the core idea. Increase your core body temperature, get your heart rate up, your breathing rate, blood flow to the muscles. All that internal plumbing needs to get going.
Wow.
And it also increases something called joint viscosity. Basically makes the fluid in your joints a bit less thick, more lubricating.
So smoother movement.
That's the idea. And for this phase, you can do general movements like some light cardio, maybe jumping jacks or something. Or even better, do movements that are like simplified versions of what you're about to do.
Oh, okay. So more specific is better. Like if I'm going to run, maybe some dynamic leg swings and light jogging instead of just arm circles.
Precisely. You want to start preparing the body in ways that are relevant to the actual workout. So not just breaking a sweat, but targeted preparation.
Got it. Okay, phase 2 was activate and mobilize. What's that about? Sounds important.
It really is. This is about, activate the specific key muscle groups you'll be relying on heavily in your session.
Like waking them up.
Kind of, yeah. Getting them ready to fire properly. Think about activating your glutes before squats or your core before lifting. And the mobilize part is about taking your key joints through their full available range of motion.
Okay, so muscles ready, joints moving freely makes sense.
Yeah.
What kind of things would you do here?
This is where you might see things like mini band walks to activate the hips and glutes, maybe some balance work to engage stabilizers, or exercises like Supermans for your back, inchworms, body weight squats and lunges, sumo shuffles, even some spinal mobility stuff.
Right, lots of those movements you see people doing that look kind of specific.
Yeah, they're designed to build that stable, mobile foundation before you add the intensity or load of the main workout.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So raise, then activate and mobilize. What's the third phase? Potentiation performance. Sounds intense.
It's about bringing the intensity up closer to what you'll actually be doing in the workout. It serves two purposes, really. One is just to get your body used to that higher level of effort, and the other is to potentially tap into something called post-activation potentiation, or PP.
PP. Okay, what's that? Sounds fancy.
It is a bit sciencey, but the basic idea is that doing a high-intensity but non-fatiguing exercise can actually make your muscles more responsive and able to produce more force immediately afterward.
Oh, interesting. Like priming the pump.
Exactly. A great analogy. So in this phase, you do exercises that are very specific to your sport or activity, gradually increasing the intensity,
Huh.
maybe some short, sharp sprints if you're a runner, or some plyometrics like box jumps, or maybe lighter sets of your main lift done at a faster speed.
So for lifting weights, maybe some lighter, faster squats before my heavy squat sets.
That's a classic example of using PP. It wakes up the nervous system, gets it ready to recruit more muscle fibers for the main event.
Huh, that's clever. So the warm-up isn't just about preventing injury. It's actively trying to boost performance right from the start.
That's a key goal of a well-structured warm-up, definitely. And Science for Sport also points out, don't forget the mental side. The warm-up is also your time to get focused, maybe use some self-talk or music, especially if you're going for like a max effort lift or a competition.
Good point. Mind and body working together. So
Mhm.
it's clear a warm-up shouldn't be generic, right? It needs to fit the activity.
Absolutely crucial. The warm-up should have physiological and biomechanical similarities to what you're about to do. Warming up for a technical soccer session with lots of change of direction looks very different from warming up for a one-rep max deadlift.
Makes total sense.
Science for Sport also mentions the RAMP method as another framework. It's basically the same ideas: raise, activate, mobilize, and potentiate. It just gives you that acronym to remember.
Rampy. Okay, easy to remember.
And that last append, the potentiate or performance part, that needs to be flexible. It depends on your goals for that session. Are you working on speed, agility, power? And also on you as an individual. What do you need to feel ready?
Right, and then I guess if you're short on time,
Yeah, if time is tight, the focus tends to shift towards really exercise-specific warm-ups, maybe doing lighter sets of the main exercise, and probably minimizing things like long, static stretching during the warm-up itself.
okay, so warm-ups.
Yeah.
Crucial, structured, specific, and performance enhancing. Got it. Now, let's flip to the other end, the cool down. This is where things get interesting, you said.
Yeah, this is where the common wisdom and the bulk of the scientific evidence start to diverge a bit, which might surprise you.
No. How so? I mean, everyone says you need to cool down to recover better, flush out lactic acid, prevent soreness.
That's definitely the widely held belief. And the idea that active cooldowns, like that light jogging we mentioned, are better than just stopping and resting passively. That's being questioned quite a bit by research, particularly that big review in PMC we looked at.
Really? So maybe walking it off isn't the magic bullet we thought.
Let's look at what that review found about the actual physiological effects. One big reason people give for active cooldowns is clearing metabolic byproducts, especially lactate, right?
Yeah, that lactic acid burn feeling people talk about. You want to get rid of it.
Well, active cooldowns do generally clear lactate from your blood faster than passive rest. That part is true.
Okay, so there's something happening there.
Yes, but here's the catch. Does clearing it from your blood faster actually matter that much for your recovery or next performance? The review points out that blood lactate goes back to resting levels within, say, 20 minutes to maybe 2 hours anyway, even if you just sit down.
Ah, so it sorts itself out relatively quickly regardless.
Pretty much. And more importantly, that faster blood clearance doesn't consistently lead to you performing better next time. Plus, the evidence for active cooldowns clearing lactate faster from the muscle itself is even weaker and less consistent.
So the main rationale, the lactate thing, is maybe not as impactful as we assumed.
It seems that way based on current evidence. The benefit is debatable, you know.
Okay, what about other things, like getting your heart rate back down gently? Isn't that good?
Active cooldowns might lead to a slightly quicker recovery of heart rate and breathing rate compared to just stopping cold.
Right.
But, and this is a big but, we don't actually know if this faster rate recovery translates to a lower risk of things like fainting right after exercise or cardiovascular complications later on. The link just isn't clearly established.
So again, a measurable effect, but the real-world health benefit isn't proven.
Exactly. It's unknown if it truly reduces those risks.
What about the immune system? You sometimes feel a bit run down after really hard exercise. Can cool downs help there?
There's some suggestion that an active cooldown might partially prevent the temporary dip in immune function that can happen after intense exercise.
Okay, that sounds potentially useful.
Potentially, yes, but again, the crucial next step is missing. We don't know if this slight effect on immune markers actually means you get sick less often. The practical benefit is still unclear.
Seeing a pattern here. Measurable short-term physiological changes, but uncertain long-term or practical benefits. Now, the big one for many people, muscle soreness, DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. Does cooling down help prevent that awful day after feeling?
Right. This is probably the reason most people do a cool down, and here the evidence is pretty clear, actually. Most studies show that active cooldowns do not significantly reduce DOMS.
Wow, okay. That directly contradicts what I think most people believe.
It does, and it also doesn't seem to improve the recovery of other markers we use to gauge muscle damage. So that light jog or cycle might make you feel like you're doing something good for tomorrow's soreness, but the data doesn't really back that up strongly.
So all that effort might be not wasted, but not achieving the main goal people think it is.
For reducing soreness and muscle damage markers, the evidence points that way. Similarly, active cooldowns generally don't seem to help recover neuromuscular properties like how well your muscles can contract any faster, or improve your range of motion right after, or reduce that feeling of musculotendinous stiffness.
Okay, so performance recovery, flexibility recovery, stiffness. Cool downs aren't really helping much there either, according to the science.
Generally, no significant benefit shown compared to passive recovery. And here's another twist.
Oh boy, what now?
Active cooldowns, especially if you do them for too long, might actually interfere with muscle glycogen resynthesis.
Glycogen, that's the muscle's fuel storage.
Exactly. Your body needs to replenish that after a workout. But if you keep exercising, even lightly for an extended period, you're still using some fuel, and it might slow down the process of restocking the tanks.
So cooling down for too long could actually hurt my recovery for the next workout.
It's possible, yeah. Particularly if that next workout is also high intensity and relies on having full glycogen stores. Shorter active cooldowns, say 10 to 15 minutes, seem to interfere less, but longer ones might be problematic for glycogen.
That's really counterintuitive. You think you're helping recovery, but you might be hindering fuel replenishment.
It's a key consideration. The review also looked at hormones and psychological recovery. Generally, active cooldowns didn't significantly speed up the recovery of hormone levels back to baseline.
And psychologically, how you feel?
Also, not much difference in measured psychological recovery scores, although subjectively, individuals often perceive them as beneficial. They might feel better doing one.
Ah, the placebo effect maybe. Or just the ritual feels good.
Could be a bit of both. There's definitely a psychological component, but physiologically, the measured benefits for recovery seem quite limited, especially compared to the benefits of a good warm-up.
Okay, that's a lot to digest about active cooldowns. What about stretching? That's usually part of the cooldown ritual for many people. Mayo Clinic said it helps flexibility.
Yes, and that's true. Regular stretching done consistently over time does improve flexibility and range of motion. No doubt about that.
But what about stretching specifically in the cooldown? Does that help with recovery, soreness, injury prevention right after exercise?
That's where the evidence gets shaky again. Studies haven't consistently shown that stretching after exercise prevents muscle soreness or injury. We have that PMC review, but also other specific reviews looking just at post-exercise stretching.
And what do they generally find? Because, again, the common advice for years was stretch after you exercise.
Well, a big systematic review and meta-analysis looked at this specifically post-exercise stretching for short-term and delayed recovery of strength, range of motion, and DOMS in adults under 40.
Okay, so focused on recovery metrics.
Exactly. And their conclusion was that post-exercise stretching doesn't consistently improve any of those things compared to just passive recovery, basically, just resting.
So again, compared to doing nothing, stretching didn't really add a recovery benefit.
For those specific outcomes in that population, the evidence wasn't strong. They looked at static stretching, passive stretching, PNF common types. Interestingly, they didn't find studies using dynamic stretching for post-exercise recovery to include.
Was there any evidence that made things worse?
No, they didn't find evidence that it impaired recovery either. It just didn't seem to help significantly compared to rest or other methods. The data overall was described as scarce and heterogeneous, meaning the studies were all quite different.
So, hard to draw really firm conclusions then.
Right. The researchers basically said the current guidelines recommending post-exercise stretching for recovery aren't strongly supported by the available evidence. It might be based more on tradition than solid proof.
That's quite a statement. Tradition over proof.
It highlights the need for more, better research. And remember the limitation you brought up earlier?
Yeah. Who are the people in these studies?
Mostly healthy men under 40. So the external validity, how much it applies to everyone else, women, older adults, kids, people with injuries, is poor. We just don't have good data for those groups on post-exercise stretching for recovery.
That's critical context. So the takeaway on stretching for recovery is uncertain at best and maybe not beneficial for young, healthy men compared to just resting.
That seems a fair summary of what those reviews suggest. Yes. It improves flexibility long term, but the immediate post-exercise recovery benefits are questionable based on current science.
Okay, let's shift focus slightly. Injury prevention, we touched on it with warm-ups. Mayo Clinic suggested both warm-up and cool-down might help. What's the stronger link?
The link seems much stronger for warming up. Science for Sports states pretty clearly that well-designed warm-ups have been continuously proven to reduce injuries.
Okay, proven is a strong word in science. That's significant.
It is, and we have concrete examples. The FIFA 11 Plus program comes up repeatedly in different sources: journals, expert discussions, research databases.
Right, you mentioned that earlier. It's a specific warm-up for soccer.
Yes, it's a structured program involving running, strength, plyometrics, and balance exercises.
Ugh.
And multiple studies, including systematic reviews, show it's effective in reducing injuries in soccer players from youth levels up. It's implemented as a warm-up.
So a specific evidence-based warm-up program demonstrably reduces injuries in a particular sport. That's compelling evidence for the warm-up side of things.
It really is. It shows that how you warm up matters, and when done well, it can have a significant protective effect. The evidence for cooldowns preventing injury is much less clear.
Got it. Warm-up seems key for injury prevention. What about the other potential benefit? Performance enhancement. Does warming up or cooling down actually help you perform better?
Again, the focus seems to be more on the warm-up. Mayo Clinic said warming up might improve performance. Science for Sport is more assertive, saying a well-planned warm-up prepares athletes physically and mentally and can improve performance.
And that potentiation phase we talked about.
Exactly. That phase is specifically designed to enhance subsequent performance using principles like post-activation potentiation. There's research looking at how different warm-up types affect things like explosive strength, showing that your warm-up choices can impact how powerfully you perform right after.
So the warm-up actively primes you for better performance. What about the cool down and performance? Any link there?
Not really in a positive way, based on what we discussed. If anything, a long active cool down might hinder glycogen resynthesis, which could potentially negatively impact performance in subsequent sessions if they're close together. The direct performance enhancement link is really with the warm-up.
Okay, so summing that up. Warming up looks pretty solid for both potential injury reduction and performance enhancement. Cooling down, much less clear benefits, especially for recovery, and maybe even some potential downsides if overdone.
That captures the general thrust of the evidence we've looked at pretty well, yes.
All right, this has been quite the deep dive. We've challenged some common assumptions, I think.
Yes.
Let's try to boil it down. What are the main takeaways for you listening at home or in the gym?
Okay, first, your warm-up. Think of it as essential preparation, not optional. There's good reason to believe it helps performance and reduces injury risk.
And make it specific, right? Not just generic jogging.
Absolutely. Tailor it to your activity. Think about that ramp structure. Raise your temp, activate the right muscles, mobilize the key joints, and potentiate or prime yourself for the performance needed. Be intentional.
Got it. Warm up. Purposeful and specific. Now the cool down.
For the cool down, the picture is fuzzier. The science doesn't strongly support the idea that active recovery or post-exercise stretching dramatically improves recovery markers like muscle soreness, strength regain, or reduces muscle damage compared to just resting.
So maybe don't rely on it as your primary recovery strategy.
Probably not. While active cooldowns clear blood lactate faster and might slow heart rate quicker, the real benefits of those effects are debatable. And stretching after exercise hasn't consistently shown recovery benefits in the research we have, especially for younger men. It does help long-term flexibility, though.
So what should you do after exercise then?
Well, the evidence suggests maybe focusing on other recovery methods known to be effective, like nutrition, hydration, and sleep. If you enjoy a light cool down or some gentle stretching and it makes you feel good psychologically, there's likely no harm.
Just don't overdo it, maybe? Especially the active part because of that glycogen thing.
Right. Keep it light and relatively brief if you choose to do an active cool down. Listen to your body. Maybe the cool down is more about shifting gears mentally, winding down, than achieving major physiological recovery gains. Individual preference plays a bigger role here, it seems.
Okay, so warm-up is critical and evidence-based. Cool-down is more about preference, gentle transition, and less about proven physiological recovery benefits.
That's a really good summary of where the science seems to stand right now.
This definitely makes me reconsider my own routines. I suspect many people listening might feel the same.
It's always good to question the why behind what we do, especially when it comes to health and fitness. The science evolves.
Absolutely. So, a final thought for you listening. Take a look at how you approach these bookends to your workout. Is your warm-up truly preparing you, activating the right things? Or is it just a habit? And for your cool down, are you chasing recovery benefits that might not be there? Or are you choosing methods that genuinely help you wind down or align with stronger evidence, like focusing on nutrition and rest afterwards? What does this make you question about your own routine? Lots to think about.
Definitely food for thought.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.